There's been a lot of talk about whether telling Kieran about the encounter with Ogerpon would have changed how the story went. Some people hold that he would change the course of the story so that your friendship with Kieran stays intact, and Ogerpon's fate, up in the air. Others hold that he would still lose it and become the champion of Blueberry Academy purely out of spite. A more extreme version of the latter holds that since this world exists in a time loop, that Kieran is fated to go mad. He is fated to lose his title of Blueberry Champion, and he is fated to go down to Area Zero and free Terapagos one way or another. I hold the idea that telling him about Ogerpon's encounter with you and Carmine won't change much at all, and it's not because of fate or time travel and the like. It's because of his motivations. In Area Zero, he basically screams them out at you and his sister. While Briar is off in La La Land somewhere, his intentions aren't about Ogerpon, they're about envying you. In another video, I once likened Kieran to a fanfic writer who would prefer to retreat into fiction than accept reality. And, well, I'm sort of glad that my idea isn't completely off. Why would you want to not retreat into your own little world? In a fantasy, you can be a hero rather than just another face and side character to someone else's story. You can be the bravest of the brave, the strongest of the strong. Anything you want can be yours. And here's the thing about power fantasy. In a power fantasy, well, escapist fiction in general, your physical and emotional labor has some kind of payoff if you're in the protagonist's seat for an episode or an arc. In a tragedy, you make the audience cry. In a comedy, anything that has a good ending, not just funny stories, there is a level of catharsis. You finally get to beat the villain who is so despicable. But reality doesn't work that way. You can work hard and still fail, that's just life. Or, heaven forbid, you work hard and someone takes all the credit for your work and leaves you nothing. Kieran is the way he is because he clings onto the fantasy of him being the protagonist. It's not about Ogerpon. It honestly never was. It's about the fantasy around Ogerpon. He's not envying you for having Ogerpon, he's envying your position as the protagonist. And for him to finally get to his senses and move on, he had to give up that fantasy forever. This is ultimately why I don't think telling him about Ogerpon will change anything. Okay, the only thing that would change is the mysterious revival of the Loyal Three because he doesn't actually punch their shrine and revives them. Somehow, that's never explained in the game at all. Or in the epilogue. That gets to change because we don't encounter the Loyal Three. However, Kieran would still lose to you over and over again, and it would chip away at his sanity. You would ultimately be the one in the protagonist seat, and that's what matters, and he has to double down to wrestle that crown off of your head. I do believe the reason he terrorized Blueberry Academy the way he did was a combination of his fantasy where the strong get to be the good guys, and maybe there would have been a culture of highly competitive bullying at Blueberry Academy because he implicitly assumes people make fun of him behind his back, even to you and his sister. Serrano, does Blueberry Academy not have something like guidance counselors? I mean, this sounds like a go to the guidance counselor's office and we call your parents type of deal. All things considered, he probably thought his reign of terror on the League Club and how zero people opposed him was because of a combination of a misguided belief that people respected him for his strength rather than feared him for his obsession, and getting it back at people who once hurt him, except he basically extended that to just about everyone who got in his way. People compare him to Wally a bit, myself included, and I can see why. He's the shy rival who grows a spine and becomes a great battler. Wally also follows that path, but instead of growing cold like Wally, Kieran opts to grow insane. He also is comparable to Hop, usually as a foil. Hop realized he wouldn't be out of his brother's shadow, or even your shadow, and thus chose to forge his own path and accepted his fate. Meanwhile, Kieran is the one who actively tries to defy his fate before completely losing. I do find it a bit reductionist to think that Kieran is some kind of jealous, clingy guy over Ogerpon, or some kind of shy kid who did no wrong because he was done a bad hand. I find him interesting because he's ultimately a side character who wants to be the main character and has built an identity around a fantasy. But those are just my thoughts. If you have any of your own, please consider leaving them in the comments. Please consider liking, subscribing, tipping the channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.